Psychological science is important because it's about us. It's about human beings, how we think and feel and act and relate to one another. I think psychology in the study of how human beings develop, how we perceive the world, how we learn, remember, how we think, the emotional challenges that we face and the joys that we have. There's just not a more interesting subject in the world, and that's why I feel like I'm so privileged to be able to spend my days teaching it to so many people.
Oh, Joseph, you are still standing today. So we're gonna give you just a little bit of praise just for you. Well, you went and you survived, you know what? You know we gotta give you praise. Sing that name. Oh, Joseph, we praise you. And when we do, we'll make it rain. Oh, can I get it? Amen. Oh, you did it. You survived and you're still alive. Well, for all you do, we praise you.
Joseph Jaffe. That's I believe that's a Japanese name, and but I tell you what, he's not famous. He's famouser than he was, or used to was. But fame is fleeting, like a paperweight. It just comes and goes.
When it comes to chicken, I'm your guy.
Blinking.
I'll have what Joseph has.
Look, somebody's talking about you.
This is what we call the voice of God.
Popping.
Everybody just gets to focus on you.
Grab me.
Probably not the best thing for an introvert.
I'm asking for you.
Well, I like a good chicken sandwich.
Touch me. Hi, David. Comment.
Oh my God.
Like.
You're actually an identical twin.
Push.
Maybe I'll just ask Julie to talk about what it is to be
No.
an identical twin.
Pick me up.
No, you didn't.
Shouting.
Surprise! Jeremiah, just hang on a second. I just got a text.
There's an edit for your new opening, Joseph.
I feel really honored to have been here, man.
By the way, you've done a masterful job. Seriously.
And it was such a joy.
Thanks, Joseph. It's an honor.
Good on you. This was a pleasure.
I mean, you are the prime example of how to pivot in this new environment.
I wish everybody gets an opportunity to interact with Joseph Jaffe.
Who needs Cameo when I've got my own personal Cameo? Well, happy Friday. So by the way, I'm trying to deal with the fact where my big ugly face just gets bigger and bigger over time. And there's a bug. There's a rat in my kitchen. What I'm going to do, there's a little bit of a bug. And so occasionally, you're just going to have to see me doing something like that. I don't know why it's happening, but it happens and life happens. We got to roll with the punches. And trust me, with a face for radio, it's better that you see me smaller than larger. So welcome back to the show. It is Friday, July 11th. But of course, you could be watching this at any point in time in the future and at your leisure on demand. And just know that when this was recorded, it was July 11th, 2025. The world somehow is still turning. And through hope, positivity, and optimism, we're able to move things forward. Why wouldn't I be hopeful? Why wouldn't I be positive? And why wouldn't I be optimistic when I have a Dr. David Myers on the show? I mean, he's at Hope, University, so he knows all about hope. He puts the hope in university, and we're going to be talking about self. We're going to be talking about faking it till you make it. We're going to talk about happiness. We're going to talk about, quite frankly, anything he wants to talk about. I'm just absolutely thrilled that he's here with me today. I always start off with my why statement, which is, as a teacher, facilitator, and a coach, I help high aspiring entrepreneurs, owners, and their business leadership teams get unstuck, return to growth, and become forever changed. All of these things really kind of stem from my own journey. First of all, this show is all about hope, positivity, and optimism. It was started during COVID when people were stuck in general or stuck in their homes, quite literally. And the best way, of course, when you're stuck is to get unstuck. And if you like the show, there are 800 episodes like it. Please subscribe at bit.ly/subscribe to the show. As a business and leadership coach, I help companies grow or return to growth. But remember, growth is not always about EBITDA, whatever the hell that stands for, or profitability. Sometimes it stands for growing up, growing out, and growing in terms of your own evolution and your maturation, and being able to really find your purpose and your presence in this world. And finally, my book, Forever Changed: How a Global Pandemic Changed My Direction, My Purpose, and My Life, with a very simple three-pronged formula: amor, love what you do, which is the essence of happiness; veritas, be true to yourself; and vigor, stay the course, all about stamina, endurance, the long game, and being able to manage your own energy and not running out of steam. But now, before I run out of steam, it's time for the seated soliloquy, because I'm seated and it's a little bit of a monologue. And today, connected to my guest, it's called Fooler. You know, I'll be talking to Dave in just a short while about this idea of being able to fool your brain, or be able to understand the powerful impact, the connection between the mind and the body, in terms of being able to project. We talk about manifesting, and we talk about this whole idea of faking it till you're making it. There's science there. There's a lot of thinking. There's art and science that actually you can be able to create a better version of yourself, of your future self, from the present forward. It's fascinating to me, because sometimes we just don't feel good. We don't feel positive. We don't feel confident. But is there a way through a mind-body code to be able to program ourselves and be able to almost, circumvent or bypass the lizard brain, or just the brain in general, that is designed to be able to compartmentalize and say, where have we seen this before? So is there a quick start? Is there a fast track? Is there an ability to be able to find that happiness, even sometimes when we don't feel so good? I don't have to think about it. I just have to project myself forward to be able to introduce my guest, Dave Myers. Let me tell you a little bit about him. Social psychologist David Myers is a communicator of psychological science to college students and the general public. In addition to his scientific chapters and his articles in 36 science periodicals, which is 36 more than I've written for, David has authored more than 450 essays. His other writings includes books and essays on the science of happiness, the experience of hearing loss, the powers and perils of intuition, and the meeting ground between psychological science and faith. His newest book offers 40 short and fun essays, each exploring a psychological science revelation about our wonderful lives. I love that, the idea of the word wonder in wonderful. Welcome to the show, Dave Myers.
Thank you, Joe. It's a delight to be here with you.
It is wonderful to have you. And, I was thinking, where is the best place to start? And I'm not going to say the beginning, but, how about a little bit of fun? Are you ready for a little bit of fun? Those eulogy virtues.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay. So one of the things that I like to do in this little idea of fun facts is I send my private investigators into the field to dig up deep, dark, and sordid facts never ever shared before with my guests. Unfortunately, we didn't find any of them with respect to you. You're clean as a whistle. So I guess that means I just need to look harder next time, right?
I hope.
All right. Well, this is what we found about you. First of all, this is a really interesting one. Your great-grandfather is credited with inventing the ice cream soda. And so, I mean, tell us about the story. And that's you, I suppose. And this is you in the photo, right?
Yes, and this was me as part of a United Press wire service story when I was 3 years old, celebrating the anniversary of my grandfather accidentally inventing the ice cream soda when he mixed some ice cream with some soda pop in his Philadelphia drugstore. He eventually became the entrepreneur that led to a chain of drugstores in Seattle. But that was one little family claim to fame. His name was Guy, And my middle name is Guy, David G for Guy Myers.
All right. So there, first of all, being from South Africa, I know about milkshakes. I know about what we used to call double thicks, which is dollops of ice cream, so a thicker milkshake. Then there was something called like a Coke float, where you put 1 scoop of ice cream into which one is this? Is this closest to the double?
Yeah, it would be the closest thing to the Coke float, where you put ice cream in soda pop.
So let's talk about serendipity. Let's talk about happy accidents. And from your perspective, obviously, as a professor of psychology, as an author, as an expert as well, how much does luck and dumb luck and beginner's luck and serendipity and all of and the idea of and mistakes, happy accidents play a role in terms of determining, our path and our future?
It plays a very great role. And the great psychologist Albert Bandura wrote extensively about the importance of chance in human affairs, chance relationships, chance meetings. And we can all identify that in our own lives. For me, for example, I chanced to be assigned to sit next to a colleague from the University of Massachusetts at a week-long seminar in Germany. And out of that chance seating assignment, I got to know him, and he was a few months later asked by McGraw-Hill for advice as to who could write a social psych book. He chanced to drop my name as a result of that chance seating arrangement, and that led to my writing in that book, an introductory psychology book, other books, and are having this conversation today. So that's just one example of. And by the way, my favorite story from Albert Bandura's work on chance was the editor who came to hear him speak on chance encounters shaping lives, who ended up marrying the person who happened to be sitting next to him.
So this is the way I think about it sometimes is I've appreciated and I've welcomed the power of serendipity, and I even called it at one point social dipity, which is serendipity in a social age or in a social media age. But sometimes it scares the crap out of me. And I think how much of my life is built on and based on chance and all of these random encounters. And I think, even when I think about whether it's a client or et cetera, and I think that randomness, it almost makes me feel smaller and even more insignificant, that I'm not in control. And I'm just almost this idea of floating through this life or this world, in this current, in this sea of serendipity. How do you reconcile this idea of being so premeditated and intentional and controlled and in control with the power of chance?
Well, chance is not the only power in our lives. And so intention certainly matters a great deal. And a lot of other things matter that we'll be talking about in this hour. But random chance events also can lead to great tragedy, to accidents, to heartache, and also to wonderful things happening with relationships forming and professional opportunities. In my case, I'd like to think of it as a person of faith as kind of providence, is somehow behind the random seating assignment that led to our having this conversation today. But regardless of whether you think it as pure haphazard randomness or as part of some larger scheme, chance matters.
All right, so now we're going to go to another fun fact about you, and we're going to play around a little bit with AI, and I feel like, in fact, I'm pretty sure you have an opinion on the role that AI is playing, even in your field, with respect to happiness, with respect to the studies that have just come out where incredible results where AI therapists are actually providing even better results in terms of decreased anxiety and depression. So we can talk about that. But your fun fact is that between a sabbatical and working holidays, you've spent 3 years in Scotland. So we actually have a photo of you in Scotland. Tell me that this may or may not be a real photo and completely generated by AI. So here's you playing the bag. First of all, can you play the bagpipes?
I cannot play the bagpipe, but I did enjoy a mid-'80s sabbatical year at the University of St. Andrews, formed friendships there, and have been back every year since, just about, for working holidays, touring Scotland, and then parking ourselves in St. Andrews, adjacent to the university.
All right, so I'm going to try and find. I might be reaching here to a degree, but my questions related to Scotland are, first of all, why do we find people with accents to be intriguing and perceive them to be smarter than we are? So, for example, people meet me, and because of my accent, I'm able to fool them into faking my intelligence. Now, on the other hand, when I meet people from England or even Scotland, their default perception, or my default perception, is that they're more intelligent than I am. What's going on with accents? Why do accents help us fake it till we make it?
I don't know the answer to your question, Joe, but I do know that accents can raise or lower your impression of somebody. I mean, so in the UK, I imagine a Cockney accent, for example, might give you a different impression than a BBC accent. To an American, a British accent connotes a kind of interesting and smart individual. In the United States, there are certain, accents associated, say, with the Appalachian South that might convey a different impression. So I don't think it's a general rule that a different accent makes a person seem smarter or wiser.
All right, and certainly what they're wearing under the kilt as well. And but that's a different show and a different story for a different day. So the last fun fact about you is that at the age of 16, you were Washington State's youngest licensed insurance salesman or salesperson, although you never entered the family business or sold a policy. So I try to go back and so here's you as a 16-year-old insurance salesman. Now, there are two renderings, and my question for you is, are any of them even remotely close to what you look like at 16?
Well, maybe the one on the left a little bit. And by the way, I did that because I had worked in the family business, and then I took a course and passed the state exam to become a state licensed insurance salesperson. And until I got tenure, my father kept renewing that license, telling me there was a place back in the family business. But life took me in a different direction where I could try to do good and do well at the same time, which is something you try to enable your clients to do in their professional lives, Joe.
That's right. I mean, my first boss, his motto was have fun, make money. And I updated that to have fun, do good, make money, and recognize that these three aspects are not mutually exclusive, but very much can operate together and in fact reinforce one another. Have fun, do good, make money. So, all right. So enough with the fun facts. But I'm still going to ask you one question related. We will not show you as an AI-generated 16-year-old anymore. This idea of going back to, and we'll keep coming back in and out of fake it till you make it. So many times in life, we're in situations where we don't have the confidence. We might not even have the competence in terms of the experience, in terms of the wisdom, in terms of knowing the answer to a question. And yet we have to project confidence. We have to project competence without in fact being an imposter. I'd love to hear your thoughts about how, again, we reconcile, and we should be thinking about reconciling this idea of the duck that looks so calm above the water, and yet those feet are paddling like crazy.
Well, absolutely. And I can relate to what you're asking about, Joe. And I think probably any teacher can in their first days as a teacher. I remember the time when I transitioned from being a graduate student to being an assistant professor, standing in front of a class, acting like a professor. Is this how professors act? And feeling a little bit of an imposter. But if you fake it, you will eventually make it. People who play a role eventually grow into that role. People who are in their first days as a nurse or a business person or whatever will feel fragile and uncertain, but their confidence will grow if they do it. And that's just one example of how our attitudes follow our actions. And I can give you a number of other examples as well. If we will act in accord with that role, we will become, and we will start to believe and embrace what that role entails.
Yeah, I did a little bit of research, and so maybe you can talk about these three aspects related to this: self-perception theory, behavioral activation and positive psychology, and then cognitive dissonance theory, as it relates to components feeding into fake it till you make it.
Yeah, you've done some good research there, Joe. So we have a number of experiments that find, for example, if people are induced to give witness to something about which they have doubts, maybe for a little bit of money, they're going to write an essay opposed to what they really believed, like in support of a tuition increase at their college. They will come over time to believe their own words, to embrace their own actions. We have other experiments that induce people to do either a small harm, like deliver electric shock to an innocent victim, or to do a kindness to somebody. Those who are doing harm tend to come to derogate the person whom they've harmed. Those who have done a kindness to somebody come to like the person for whom they've done the kindness. And we have other experiments that manipulate people's face or posture. For example, one famous experiment, people were invited to hold a pencil in their teeth, which activates the smiling muscles, or in their lips, which activates the frowning muscles. Those induced to make a smile. And in other experiments, they've done this just by having people turn up the corner of their mouth while they attach electrodes. Find cartoons funnier, they feel happier. And likewise, people who go through the motions of confidence with their head high, striding big steps down the street feel better than those who are engaged in walking with the head down and slumped. So why is that? Partly it's what you just mentioned, a self-perception effect. We infer what others think and feel by observing their actions. We likewise observe our own actions and infer our own sentiments and attitudes as we do so. And you mentioned cognitive dissonance. That's certainly a factor here too. People come to, people who give witness to something or act in a particular way tend to justify that action, an evil action or a moral action, whatever. And it's a way of reducing dissonance, that is the discomfort about the discrepancy between what we believe and how we're acting. And so that self-justification process is another part of why it works to fake it until we make it.
There were a few beautiful sound bites that I loved, which is this idea of we come to believe in what we have done, right? We act ourselves into a way of thinking. That's as it relates to self-perception. Under behavioral activation and positive psychology, I love this concept of going through the motions can trigger the emotions.
Absolutely. Act as if you're the person you wish to become, and over time you will become more of that person.
And then under cognitive dissonance, this quote of what's thrilling is how often doing precedes believing. And so, like, if you act like a leader or a happy person, ultimately all of that cognitive dissonance gets reduced over time.
Absolutely. You tend to become, in truth, in reality, the person that you've, if you will, faked, the person that you've enacted. Now, it's also true the other way around. Our attitudes also influence our behavior, but there's a reciprocal relationship. Attitudes feed behavior, and behavior or actions feed attitudes.
So now let's get into maybe if there is a dark side of this or a Black Mirror episode. When we talk about the self, I guess the question to you is, where is that psychological line where the pretend self becomes the real self? In other words, when does behavior actually reshape identity? Or is that the whole point?
Well, that is sort of the point. I don't mean to overstate the effect of self-perception and cognitive dissonance and the extent to which identity follows action or attitudes follow behavior. There are other things that matter too, Joe.
Sure.
But this is a real process, and there's mountains of research that support it. And how do we develop an identity, a sense of who we are? Well, we act in particular situations. We embrace certain roles in our vocations, in our married life, in our relationships, uh, and in this particular social context that elicits certain actions from us. And then, as we behave in that way, we tend to become the way we're acting. And so, if a new fraternity member, sorority member may feel a little, or a new college or university student may feel like they're playing a role, they're uncomfortable, they're not sure what their identity is here. But if you will act the role, if you will behave as the situation commands, over time, that will shape who you are, your very identity.
I think there are probably some very practical applications to that in today's society. From walking into a room with a big smile on your face, looking around, making eye contact. But where I'm getting at is so many people today walk with their heads buried in this device.
Absolutely.
They're looking down. They're not engaging. What does that do in terms of this idea of projecting the confidence, the aura, the energy when people are glued to a screen?
Well, there's just an enormous amount of research on the consequences of our being glued to screens when we're made for face-to-face relationships. And so, that's a whole big subject in and of itself. But certainly, I see students walking across campus with their face in the screen, and it makes me a little sad because we're made for relationships. And we have a lot of research on how, if people are induced to engage in even micro relationships with others by, say, striking up a conversation with the barista, or striking up a conversation with your seatmate on the commuter train. And in actual experiments, people are given a Starbucks card or something like this to either do that or behave as they normally would. Those who engage others face to face in what I call micro friendships, small relationships, come out of that experience happier. And so does the person they've engaged with as a result. This is research by Nicholas Epley, my friend and colleague at the University of Chicago, which will be the subject of a new book of his.
I want to follow up on this concept of micro relationships, but first of all, just anecdotally, it's not anecdotally, it's my kids are always calling me out saying, "Dad, you're always talking to strangers." Of course, Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book about talking to strangers. I do that all the time. I'm curious. I'm always curious. Now at least I can go to them and say, "Kids, this is all about micro relationships, and talking to strangers is actually a good thing." In fact, I've spoken to a professor who would tell me, exactly that. So why is it, from a psychological standpoint, why again is it so important to be able to strike up these? Because I guess the point about these micro relationships is they're fleeting. They're people that you will know for a brief moment in time and may never see again, but still something meaningful will result in that micro interaction. Is that
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah, because we have what today's social psychologists call, Joe, a deep need to belong. We flourish when connected with others in supportive, close relationships. So a fleeting micro relationship is just a very small example of that. There are more significant examples like genuine friendships that are marked by self-disclosure and social support persisting over time. That's a wonderful thing. That's a great predictor of human happiness. The biggest example of that would be friendship that's sealed by commitment. In other words, a marriage that over time entails deep self-disclosure, mutual support in the best of instances. And happily married people are many times more likely. This is a huge variable to say that they're very happy than are those who are not permanently connected in a close relationship.
Well, sometimes I think my wife would prefer me to have a micro relationship with her, or to keep our interactions to a minimum. But I'm hoping she's not watching right now.
Joe, I'm guessing, and maybe you're an extrovert, and so it comes naturally and easily to you to strike up conversations because you're so interested in other people and you love engaging with them. But in Nick Epley's research, even introverts who were coaxed into these initiating these small exchanges, giving others compliments or asking them about themselves and about their day and so forth, emerge from the experience happier, not just extroverts.
Well, let's get into the subject of happiness, because it's how I found you. It's what I'm studying at the moment, and I guess my first question to ask you is, I asked this to actually our professor Tal Ben Shahar, which is, is being miserable a choice?
Well, first of all, we know that there's genetic influences on depression versus happiness, and we have twin studies that show that uh, pretty firmly. About half of the person-to-person variation in ongoing happiness is attributable to genetic variations. But that's not the whole story. There's other things we can do to influence our happiness, and we've been talking about acting as if we're happy and finding a little, at least temporary, increase in happiness as a result of doing so. We've already talked about the importance of close support, social relationships. That's important. Finding meaning and purpose in one's vocation and in one's life. Experiencing gratitude. Nurturing your spiritual self. These are all things that we can talk about. And there are some wonderful books written on how to embrace these variables to become a happier person.
Well, of course, I asked the question as I became larger than life again. I asked the question, which is being miserable a choice? But the corollary of that is being happy a choice?
Well, yeah, I mean, I say it's sort of like your cholesterol level. Your cholesterol level is influenced by your genetics and things beyond your control, but it's also to some extent under your control because your own exercise and diet patterns also have an influence. And in the same way, happiness is genetically influenced. Certain people have certain temperaments that are genetically influenced. That's just part of who we are and what we need to accept. But it's also true that we can do certain things in terms of how we manage our time, our life, our relationships, the priority we give to close relationships, and so forth. That can also influence our happiness. And that's what motivated me to write a book in 1992, The Pursuit of Happiness, Who is Happy and Why? And to write about happiness in articles and conversations like this ever since.
Well, let's talk about the pursuit of happiness, and then we'll get into a little bit of a reprise as well, in terms of a thesis that you wrote in 2000. One of the things that we've been taught, or that I'm learning, is you cannot pursue happiness directly. It is like staring at the sun. You need a prism. There is an indirect. The way to achieve happiness or find happiness, and certainly lasting happiness as well, is it's an indirect pursuit as opposed to a direct pursuit. What are your thoughts at the highest level about people, about the pursuit of happiness?
Well, first of all, people, ironically, who are intensely focused on the pursuit of their own happiness tend to be less happy than those who are focused beyond themselves on others. So, depressed people, for example, tend to ruminate extensively, whereas people who are focused and are curious about others and trying to make the world a better place and not thinking about themselves, ironically, are happier. So the road to happiness is definitely not just extended navel gazing, self-rumination. That's a road to misery.
Right. There's a journey and a destination, and part of the reveal is you've got to love the journey and appreciate and embrace the journey with all its warts, with all its good, bad, and uglies, but also have that purpose, have that destination, have something that is driving you in your efforts.
Absolutely. And so if you have, for example, a vocational purpose that attaches you to something larger than self, and enables you to be working for something that is meaningful to you and be meaningful to others, that's a happy condition, especially if it can be something you natively enjoy doing and for which time passes quickly when you're doing it. So people who are seeking a vocation that can make them happy can think, what am I doing when time just flies? Uh, and how do I make that into a vocation, or where is there work like that? And uh, that's just one way to find greater happiness in one's life, and to be stuck doing something where the clock is frozen.
Well, I can triangulate that quite easily. First of all, you write about the essence of flow. So that's exactly what you're alluding to.
Exactly.
Even going back to Forever Change, that is the veritas, be true to yourself. This
Right.
idea of what is my purpose? What are, we've also learned about essentially passion strengths as opposed to performance strengths. So this is this ability to find yourself and find what you were meant to do. But how many people are wafting, ghosting through life, miserable, not doing what they love, or Dave, not able to do what they love due to just whether it's socioeconomic reasons.
Right. So, I mean, you're a people person. I can already tell that, Joe. And so engaging with people brings you joy, makes the time fly. And so you're fortunate that you found work that enables you to do that. Sometimes people's economic circumstances forces them to do work that one would only be doing because one has to survive, and not because of any intrinsic or greater purpose. But even many of those jobs, I mean, making food available that nourishes the word, or cleaning facilities, or whatever on my campus, enabling education to happen, can give people a sense of meaning and purpose. And they can find friendships at the same time while they're doing that, and enjoy relationships, as well as supporting themselves and those they love.
Yeah, so in a way, it's almost refuting the concept, which is it's not really the job as much as it is the attitude, because we've all seen, whether it's going to a fast food restaurant, or encountering a janitor, or a gas pump attendant. Sometimes you're just going to find people that are just absolute joys to come across. They love
Right.
what they do. They take pride in their work. They've just got a different attitude, even though they may be surrounded by, for every one of them, 100
Right.
employees. I mean, flight attendants. How about
Right.
flight attendants
Absolutely.
on American Airlines?
People who find satisfaction in serving others.
So what does that come down to? Is it really just genetics, or is it, in this case, if you're a company, a corporation, from a training and development standpoint or culture standpoint, how can you find those people and bottle those people, create more of those people? What's the missing link in a service industry where, it is just like rolling a dice to find that one rose amongst the thorns?
Right. Well, first of all, genetics influence everything. And so I don't want to discount that. But what leadership can do is help people in an organization appreciate the importance of their role for the function of the organization. So the president of my institution, my place called Hope College, does a very good job of helping everybody understand that they are integral parts. They are components of a larger enterprise that is serving a valuable life-forming purpose. And we all have our place to play, and we can enjoy our part in doing it.
I mean, that's so consistent as well with my own coaching and business and leadership coaching as well, is to help people feel connected. Again, it comes down to belonging. And the reality is, we spend more time with the people that we work with than oftentimes our own family. Life is too short to be miserable with respect to those relationships.
Right. Absolutely.
I guess,
Completely agree.
I mean, as you know, and we'll get into it now, because I want to talk a little bit about this piece which you sent me, the funds, friends, and faith of happy people, a reprise. Set it up for me, and then we'll talk about these three key key aspects that talk about happiness, which is money matters, social support, and religious engagement.
So I have a colleague friend who's editing a new positive psychology handbook and invited me to contribute a chapter. And so what I've done is take an article that I authored for the American Psychologist 25 years ago on the funds, friends, and faith of happy people, and reprise that is reviewed. What have we learned since in the last 25 years about the funds, the friends, and the faith, that is the religious engagement of happy people? And so that's the gist, that's the story of this article, of this chapter, I should say, that's going to come out next year.
All right, so we're going to talk about these three concepts, right? Money matters, social support, and finally, religious engagement, and some of the kind of nuances that came out of it. So first of all, the bigger question, of course, is, can money buy happiness?
And the answer is, that virtually everybody would give is no. Can a little more money make us a little happier, and a little more money than that make us a little happier yet? Well, yeah, most people will agree to that. And 4 and 5 college students rate as the number one life goal becoming very well off financially. So we certainly do have the idea, even if we deny that money can buy happiness, that the funds really enable happiness, and all the good things that the funds can buy are what make happiness. And so do they? Does it? That's an empirical question that we're asking in this research.
There is research out there that actually says there is a correlation between money and happiness, up until about 70,000 in terms of $70,000 from a household income standpoint, but after which there is absolutely no statistical correlation between more money and more happiness.
Yeah, you're onto something there, Joe. And here's the way it goes. First, we have research that asks, are rich nations happier than not so rich nations? And as you go from a very poor nation like Togo up to middle income nations, and then to higher income nations such as those of Western Europe, the United States, and Canada,
right,
you do find some increase in the happiness of their peoples, but it tapers off once you about reach that level. And the $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 per person, you get diminishing returns with increasing national income after that. Secondly, you can ask, are rich individuals happier than not so rich individuals? Again, we find this curvilinear relationship. Poverty isn't bliss. Money enables you to have a certain measure of control over your life, as well as to have security about material things that sustain you. So with increasing income or with increasing wealth, there is increase in people saying they're very happy or they're very satisfied with life. But again, it tapers off as you approach $100,000, and multimillionaires aren't happier than mere millionaires. And so you get kind of diminishing returns with increasing happiness. By the way, a little side comment here. Economists have said, well, no, it's a steady increase. The more income, the more happiness. But they're looking at log income, not the real dollars that you and I are looking at. And finally, we can ask, with economic growth over time, has human happiness increased? And we now have 3 times the per person disposable income in inflation-adjusted dollars is what we did back in 1950. And we have all the technology and the travel and the just so much good stuff in our life. We eat out 2.5 times as often. We have twice as many cars per person. The list goes on and on. Are we happier than we were in 1950? And the answer is no. Economic growth has provided no boost to human morale. So money is important if it enables security and and the ability to afford life's necessities. I don't want to romanticize poverty, but materialism and the extreme accumulation of wealth doesn't lead to greater and greater happiness, and thus tax breaks that sustain greater and greater wealth for millionaires and billionaires isn't really going to make them any happier. Some of that money would do more to bring happiness to those who have so little.
Yeah, well, we didn't apply the happiness filter or lens to the current big beautiful bill. But as the colloquialism goes, "Mo money, mo problems." That certainly is true. On a more serious note, I mean, something that is absolutely relevant in today's times is income inequality. And so, what are your thoughts on how income inequality is actually, producing or impacting and influencing a nation's or people's happiness?
Yeah, well, there's some great research on that, on the inequality of communities and inequality in nations, and how that is associated with uh, social problems and with less happiness than in more equal situations. And it's easy to understand how inequality might be socially toxic, because part of our assessment of our own happiness, Joe, comes from how we compare our present circumstance to our recent experience. And if our income and our life in general is on an upswing, we're happier than if it's on a downswing compared to our recent past. But another thing that really matters is not only how we compare ourselves to our recent past, but how we compare ourselves to others around us. And if we look around us and we see abundance and wealth and privilege that we don't have, if there's great inequality, then there's less happiness than if we look around us and we see people who are like us. So, for example, there's been research that has tracked happiness in China over time. And the economic growth in China over the last 40 years is just amazing. They've gone from a country where virtually nobody had telephones or color televisions or any of the things that we associate with modern life to a country where most people have those things today. And yet people are now happier, even with their greater material abundance. What's happened? Well, what's happened is China has gone from relative equality to greater inequality. And so it's easier to look up the ladder and see people that have more than you do, and to feel a certain envy and unhappiness as a result of that social comparison.
We often talk about comparison is the thief of joy.
Right.
And I guess what's happening here is it's just becoming a lot more noticeable with respect to a widening or a chasm, a widening of the chasm between the haves and the have-nots.
Right. Sure. I mean, so really there's kind of two questions. There's, I guess, maybe three questions. One is a matter of just justice, of economic justice, inequality versus inequality politics. I mean, there's a case to be made for a free, unregulated, free enterprise that incentivizes human achievement. I don't want to depreciate that or deny that.
Right.
But there's also thinking where I was going with this. Anyway, I've lost my train of thought there. But
it happens. It happens to me. It's probably happened to me about 12 times in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, I have a third point there, but I lost it. Sorry.
It will come back to you. But I want to just touch on the second one as well, which is social support, because there is the essence of this eroding in today's society with, as you talk about remote working, and I think it's called digital isolation. So
absolutely,
I would love to hear your thoughts. I mean, earlier I spoke about us being kind of hooked on, our mobile phones. But what are your thoughts about real relationships in a digital, in a social, and quite frankly, an artificially intelligent and AI era?
Right. Yeah. So in this era, we are spending less time face to face with each other. We're eating out together less often. We're having people into our homes for supper or whatever less often than we did before. And the toll of that is especially great on teens and young adults. And we have so much evidence now that shows that as the smartphones and social media spread and began sucking up enormous amounts of teen and particularly teen girls and young adults' time, their happiness went down, the risk of depression went up, suicide visits to emergency rooms have gone up. And the more screen time they have, once it's beyond like 3 hours a day or so, the more toxic that cut off from face-to-face relationships and decline in sleep and everything else that's associated with it becomes. And we also have experiments that have put people on social media diets and found their happiness getting a temporary boost as a result of that. So we have, and this is what my colleague and friend John Haidt and my social psychology co-author and friend Jean Twenge have researched extensively. And now, as a result, we see the movement in certain nations, such as Australia and the UK, and in certain states of the United States, toward mandating phone-free schools. You park your phone when you come in, you pick up your phone when you go home, and you talk to each other eyeball to eyeball in the lunchroom rather than staring at your phones. And you engage with your teacher rather than pulling out your phones. And so it's been very well received where it's been implemented.
I was just learning about Dan Buettner, who wrote his book about the blue zones, and also, as was described, the new wonder drug, which is prescription free. In fact, it's free to people, and it involves just, I think you know where I'm going with this, right? Which is
that's why I'm laughing.
Nutrition, exercise, touch, and recovery.
Right.
And I think it's a really good lens when we think about, nutrition and our diets, exercise. So much of this can be explained by just getting outside and putting down the phone.
Oh, absolutely. Lifestyle management is a very important thing for contributing to human flourishing and lengthening lifespan as well.
Right, and so it's long. It's, what do they say? This idea of adding years to your life and life to your years.
Absolutely.
So even recovery, right? Even recovery with respect to sleep, when we're on the phones before we fall asleep, when we wake up in the middle of the night and we're checking random notifications, it seems so obvious, but why are we being so dumb? Why are we so dumb?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's a little like a drug that has immediate pleasures that keep us attached to it, even though it's to our detriment. And so, really important part, particularly for teen and young adult well-being, is to harness the positive power of smartphones and social media, but to manage one's time and one's engagement with it intentionally, and not to let it displace face-to-face relationships, not to let it displace 8 hours sleep a night, which is so important for human flourishing and for alertness and for safety, and not to let it intrude on one's other responsibilities and one's learning.
I'm surprised that there hasn't been a breakthrough in terms of connecting, for example, number of steps to number of minutes allowed on a phone before it locks. Gamifying this in terms of parents trying to reclaim some kind of fleeting control with respect to their kids becoming addicted. But maybe happiness is the key. We should be addicted to happiness, not hedonistically, but all of these awful addictions. What about the addiction to happiness? Or can that be a bad thing too?
No, and fortunately, I think people like John Haidt and Jean Twenge, through their writings and speaking, are helping today's generation of teens and younger adults recognize the toxicity of excessive smartphone social media engagement and the social comparisons of people who are presenting their lives in such beautiful and happy and socially engaged ways that make them feel impoverished by comparison. And so you need to do something to manage your time to support your own health and well-being. And your own health and well-being entails sleep, it entails face-to-face meaningful relationships, it entails time allocated in the ways that are going to help you to grow your mind and your life.
In the time that we have left, I would love to talk a little bit about the book that's in the background. How do we know ourselves? So tell us a little bit about the book and obviously why people should buy it.
Thank you, Joe. So kind of you to ask. So I love reporting on psychological science and applying it to people's everyday lives. That's what I do in textbooks for introductory psychology and social psychology. I have a website, in addition to my website, davidmyers.org, a website, talkpsych.com, which I see is showing on the screen right now. Thank you, Joe. And that's a place where every 3 weeks or so, I post an essay on many of the topics that we've been discussing, distilling wonderful things from psychological science in 800 to 1,000 words or so and applying them to our everyday lives. And so I love helping people think smarter about their lives. I love helping people appreciate how wonder-filled, how wonderful their lives are through the processes that psychological science is exploring. And so these short, to me, fun, easy essays, a collection of 40 of them, are a way of doing that. Thanks for asking, Joe.
Of course. How do we know ourselves? This is where you can go out and buy the book. And by the way, a whole bunch of other books. How many have you written now in total?
Well, about 18 or so. But there's some of them are different variations on the textbooks, but some of them are trade books on topics like happiness, intuition, the psychology and religion, and so forth.
I am woefully behind on my 6, but may you inspire me to continue writing.
Well, it's my vocation to. I have the great privilege of reading all of psychological science, trying to discern what's most humanly significant and life relevant about that, and then offering it to people, both college students and the general public. And so I'm just privileged to have this vocation. It's one of those jobs where, like you like to help people find, Joe, where people can feel like they're doing well and doing good at the same time.
Well, you have another passion, strength, and it's about hearing. And this is very near and dear to my heart, by the way, because my late mom was hard of hearing her whole life. She was born hard of hearing and went through her whole life. And so it's been a part of my life. She was actually instrumental in bringing the Sennheiser loop system to South Africa to allow people to be able to go to the theater or the opera and hear when they'd never been able to hear before. So I would love to give you a few moments to talk about this.
Well, that's wonderful. Without my hearing technology, I'm wearing a cochlear implant. I take this stuff off at night. I am completely deaf. I cannot hear the sound of my own voice. And I have lived as a person with significant hearing loss. I've represented Americans with hearing loss on the Advisory Council of the National Institute on Deafness, and have written extensively about my advocacy for assistive listening systems, such as what you're showing, which can deliver public address sound in theaters and auditoriums and lecture halls and worship places directly to people's ears, where my hearing technology can become customized speakers that are in my ears that are receiving the broadcast sound. Those of us who've experienced this find it just an absolutely wonderful thing. And I'm happy to have been a part of a movement that's brought this to thousands of venues in the United States. The National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. is in the process of installing this hearing loop technology this year. And so if anybody's interested in reading more about it, they can just Google hearingloop.org, and they'll be taken to a website that I've created and now given over to another hearing center that's publicizing this advocacy for people with hearing loss.
It's amazing to think about what you're doing. And, the new AirPods, for example, now have amplification or some hearing aid, I guess, functionality or technology. Do you think we'll get to a point when we think about progress and we think about where the world is heading now, everyone focusing on AI and ChatGPT, where people will no longer have hearing loss?
No, I don't think AI is going to take away the reality of hearing loss, although there is the long-term potential for genetic modification through CRISPR to identify the genes that create hearing loss and to substitute those genes in an early stage of life and thus prevent future hearing loss. So I mentioned that I served on NIH's National Institute on Deafness Advisory Council, where I got to know a hearing geneticist who looked at my audiogram and said, I think I know the gene that causes your hearing loss. So he sent me some spit tubes. They analyzed it at the University of Iowa, and he told me the precise gene that causes my hearing loss. And that, and then we discussed later the prospects for modifying those genes right inside the ear to prevent hearing loss in children that carry that gene.
Well, hopefully, as they say, we normally say from your mouth to God's ears, but I'll say from your mouth to your ears. May we find that in our lifetime. We're going to end with just a quote. I always find a quote for my guests. This is from someone, no doubt, that you know very well, which is Amy Cuddy. And Amy Cuddy said, "Smile, even if you don't feel like it. Your brain doesn't know the difference." So hopefully people have smiled along with us today. Fake it till you make it. This is the one, the only Mr. David Myers. And Dave, according to Chuck Norris,
You are Chuck Norris approved.
and hopefully that made you smile, and we'll be back soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Joe, for welcoming. Enjoyed our conversation thoroughly.
As did I. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.